It was the hardest battle that I've ever fought. The battle with yourself is a battle like no other because you're facing you.
Welcome to Mindset Lessons from the Field. I'm Gina Casazza, the author of Training with the SEAL. I officially stopped saying upcoming author of Training with the SEAL because I started posting those chapters on Substack. So go over to the Substack and start reading the official chapters for my memoir, Training with the SEAL. Today's guest, warrior in every sense, 13 years as a Navy SEAL, 8 deployments, now therapist, author, helping others navigate chaos with clarity. He didn't just survive the battlefield, he faced the internal war that comes after. When the armor comes off, he found the courage to do something far harder than Hell Week, and that's sit with his emotions and ask for help. He's here to talk about what real mental toughness looks like, why independence is often a myth, and how to build psychological flexibility, the key to thriving through chaos. Ladies and gentlemen, without further introduction, Jeff Boss. Jeff, thank you so much for being on the show.
Hey, Gina, thank you. Thanks for having me. That's a great intro. I appreciate it.
Of course. Yeah. I just, that bio, I need to start there because I want to know, we said key to thriving through chaos is building psychological flexibility. What exactly does that mean?
In a nutshell, psychological flexibility is basically what allows you to open up, be present, and really do what matters. And I'm taking kind of a page out of acceptance and commitment therapy here because that's exactly what ACT is. It's like I said, opening up, being present, and doing what matters, which is so hard for so many people because they get so entrenched in their thoughts. The metaphor that I use is kind of like a fish that gets, bites a lure, right? The fish is our thoughts. I'm sorry, the fish is us, and the lure is our thoughts. And so that lure, it just kind of jerks us around, and it compels us to, behave and, feel things and, just do things that is kind of contrarian to the ideal person that we want to be. And so that unwillingness to sort of, not even just let go, but just acknowledge that there's discomfort here, that this is a thought and nothing else, right? Thoughts aren't us, they're just thoughts. And so that unwillingness, people tend to, just hold on to and just really, keeps them rigid, keeps them inflexible. And so what I help do is help people open up that thought space, that emotional space into, sitting with that kind of fear, right? Fear to embrace thoughts that they, might not want or emotions, similarly. Or in the bio that you read about me, like you said, sitting with uncomfortable emotions is not, everybody wants to avoid it. That's what psychological flexibility helps do.
I mean, you wanted to avoid it, right? I mean, it was something that was harder. I shouldn't even say avoid it because you went through it, but you found it extremely challenging.
It was the hardest thing. It was the hardest battle that I've ever fought. I mean, the battle with yourself is a battle like no other, right? Because you're facing you. Right. And all those things that your mind tells you over the years, and especially as SEALs, we're trained to compartmentalize emotions. I mean, like a black belt. I mean,
you're so good at it. Right? You're so good at it.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, there were years, so many years that I didn't even realize I was doing it. That's just who I was. Right. And so it just caught up with me. And I realized that how I was behaving, it wasn't the person that I knew I was deep down. And I had to do something about it. And I didn't know how. So that's when I asked for help. And that was in 2018. And I've kind of, been down this path ever since. And quite honestly, it's really what compelled me to become a therapist.
If someone wants to start to sit with their emotions, as it is uncomfortable, what would you say is a good strategy to push through the discomfort?
So it is, I like to phrase it a different way. It's not so much pushing through because we can all push through pain and discomfort. It's acknowledging that there is discomfort here, accepting it and working alongside with it. So it's not so much pushing the pain out, it's kind of working alongside of it, right? Because every single client that comes in to the therapy sessions, they all want to avoid something. And it's typically some kind of emotion, some kind of sadness or grief, or, some kind of marital discord or, negative thoughts they're having, something like that. They want to avoid it. And the thing is, they can't, right? Because they're humans. They're always going to have these thoughts. They're always going to have these emotions. So stop battling it, stop fighting it, and learn how to live with it. It's not so much resisting it, it's changing your relationship with it. That's the really the key here. I totally forgot the original question, but hopefully what I said was was addressing it.
No. I really like that. I want to talk then, though, in segueing, because as we're talking about this, it's an independence that is a myth I'm curious about, because, we're sitting with ourselves and, we're fighting our own battles and all that stuff. And now I want to go into why independence is often a myth.
I remember your original question. How do you sit with it? So we can come back to it if you want. But to answer your question here, why is independence a myth? Because we are defined by what we are not. I know I'm me because I know I'm not Gina, and vice versa, right?
Okay.
I know I'm a male because I know I'm not a woman. From the moment that we come into this world, we are dependent on our parents or our caregivers for our food, for our shelter, for covering, for protection, safety, all that. And that never really changes. Not so much being dependent on parents, but being dependent on others to define ourselves, to connect, to heal ourselves. I mean, the myth of the self-made man or self-made woman, I can't think of a worse myth, right? Because it's just not true. Like nobody is self-made. Everybody gets to where they are because of somebody else. And so that's why that myth of independence, it's just that, it's a myth, right? In independence, I think people tend to conflate independence with avoidance. So, and this is very much common with men. I'm strong, I'm independent, I can do my own thing, I can do it on my own, I don't need anybody else. That's not independent. That's avoidant. I don't want to ask for help because for whatever reason there's fear down there. They don't acknowledge that, they don't realize that, but that's typically what's below that.
When I was reading a couple of things and things that you've said and stuff, and you talked about Spuds teaches you to be a warfighter. I think that's not a warrior. I believe that's what you wrote. And I want to know what the difference is and why it mattered in the battle. After the battlefield.
So the difference between a warrior and a warfighter is warfighters tend to have a single motion, or I'm saying a single focus mission, and that is to destroy. They are externally focused, meaning focusing on the battle out there. They're ignoring any kind of internal battle because they're just not aware of it. And so the warfighter goes out there and they just do. Right? They just execute task after task, and they just keep on rolling. That's not, restricted to military. I mean, there's a lot of high performers in corporate who are just on the hamster wheel, right? Just going and going and going, and they're never taking time to really look within and ask themselves, "Am I in the right place? Right? Am I chasing the right thing? Am I going in the right direction?" Warriors can do exactly what warfighters can do. However, they can also go internal. They can go inside and look at themselves. So I guess in a nutshell, warfighters are more externally focused. They're working on the external battle. Warriors can do both, but they check in with their internal sides first.
Gotcha. So when did you start to notice like those cracks, like in the warfighter identity?
Warfighter and warrior, I kind of came up with that a few years ago, but I'd say before I could even put terms to it, it was after I medically retired in 2013. I'd say it's probably 2016, 2017, I noticed that something was off. And so, again, that warfighter in me was just pushing through because I could and because I knew how. But ultimately, it just caught up with me. And that's when I asked for help in 2018. And then that's when I sort of, moved into this whole warrior space.
Would you say that asking for help was a moment when you decided to rebuild?
Oh, yeah, because I was already broken down, right? I was at rock bottom. And so there was nothing, I couldn't tear anything down anymore. I was already at rock bottom, and so I had to rebuild. Yeah, rebuilding because I knew the person that I was capable of being, and I knew who I really was at my core, but my actions weren't congruent with that person, and I didn't know how to make them congruent.
How was it the first time? Super uncomfortable? Was it like, did you want to, like, how did you push through it to know, like, this is right, this is what I need?
I pushed through it because I've seen other friends hit the same rock bottom and ask for help in the same way that I did. And I saw drastic changes in them, like two of my closest friends. When I saw them, I was like, wow, whatever you're doing, I need some of that. So connect me with whoever this is. So that was the big realization for me.
So I want to move into, like, because we talked about sitting with yourself, knowing yourself, like that part of it. And, that's really not action. It's like, I mean, it's not like action, like we think about, where it seems like being is more, and you talk about this, you talk about being as the foundation for mental toughness. Like, what do you think most people get wrong about toughness in general?
Kind of, exactly what you just said is that they think toughness is all about doing. It's all about going harder, going faster, pushing themselves further. And that is true to an extent, but there's also a point where it becomes, it kind of becomes catastrophic in the sense that you're burning the candle at both ends. And yeah, you can go like with Hell Week, for example. You can stay up for 5.5 days and carry a boat over your head, but you're not going to be doing that every single week. There has to be some kind of balance, right? So knowing when to pare back and give yourself a rest and listen to yourself, listen to your heart, listen to your intuition, that takes some mental strength too, because dopamine is obviously an addiction, and getting things done, like reading all your emails, trying to get to like zero inbox, that's a goal for a lot of people, right? Doesn't make any sense to me, but that's a whole other conversation. All those tasks of busyness that are not necessarily productive. It's busyness masked as productivity. That takes some mental toughness to say, hey, this I can leave work with say 20 emails in my inbox. I can get to them tomorrow. All right. So it's really just not just, but because it's not easy, but it is really just acknowledging that, all right, there's some discomfort here, and I'm good with it. I can live with discomfort. It's not going to kill me. The one thing all emotions have in common, I don't believe in absolutes, so this is one of the, I don't believe in absolutes, but at the same time, there's an exception to every rule, right? So the one thing all emotions have in common is they're impermanent. It's like waves, right? They come and they go. They come and they go. Mm-hmm. So sitting with that discomfort, just acknowledging it, noticing it, naming it, try to get as specific as possible. By the time you get to the bottom of that, of that emotion in terms of detail, it's gone.
Now, you just mentioned Hell Week, and I wanted to talk about what I read about Hell Week, where you talked about, and this was, I remember for myself when I was in the Navy SEAL prep program, and there was this moment where like you just start to surrender, just like, it's like, for me, it was miserable. This was not something that I always was like, why do people find this fun? None of it was fun for me. And I was just doing like a baby course compared to what you did. And, there was this moment where like I pushed through the pain where you surrender to it. And there's a feeling that happens that I really can't explain. It's like, and it reminded me of that when you talked about that moment in Hell Week when you just surrendered. And, I want to know what that taught you about awareness, and also if you could just tell that story on and what it felt like for you to surrender, and translating that to a civilian.
Wow, there's a lot in there in terms of letting go of like trying to. So what I hear from your experience is you're trying to resist the difficulty of it, right? Trying to almost like save yourself for the entire week, maybe save it.
No, it was just like, it was just so painful. I didn't think my body could keep going. And then Coach Mac was like, just go. Like you will push past a certain point where it will it will become freeing, but all this pain that you're feeling and how you think you can't go a little bit more and watch that breakthrough happen. And that's exactly what happened. And I was like, whoa. And it's just, he goes, you're learning to surrender to the pain.
So that's awesome. That I love to hear about your experience on maybe another time. I'm curious to hear how it went for you. So what you just described, Gina, was the psychological flexibility, because before you let go, your mind was telling you, I can't, my body's going to give out. This is too much. That's getting entangled with your thoughts, right? And so a lot of people, typically the people who quit, they listen to that voice, right? They listen to those thoughts and they're like, okay, I can't do it. But those thoughts aren't real. So I guess to your question about letting go, I don't know the specific point, quite honestly. It was probably earlier than probably some others, because there's no way I was going to quit Hell Week. There's no way. That's the only thing that I came into the Navy to do, was to be a SEAL. And I got recycled too, because I had a stress fracture in my femur. I got rolled back Wednesday morning of Hell Week, 2 classes, and I had to go through it again. I mean, that really sucked, obviously, but like there's no way that I was going to do that. But to your point about letting go, once you let go and there's no resistance, I mean, it makes things so much easier, because you're not just right. The biggest battle through through your experience that you described up to that point was with yourself, right? With your mind. And so you take that portion out of the equation. All you got to do is perform. All you have to do is just do, right? Just stay up and just perform. It's one less fight. As soon as you accept that, it sucks.
You know, I've never experienced this, obviously, but for you, like, there's so many people that's been on the show that they've talked about, like, I remember one SEAL mentioned, like, we thought we were like really like running, and and then you watch, like, when he was an instructor or whatever, and it's like, you're barely moving during that time, but in your mind. And it was just so funny though, because there is a video of me and my brothers actually came. We used to do it on the beach in Santa Monica, and my brothers came to one day of our training, and at one point my brothers were looking at me and they were like, is she even moving? Like, they're like, it's like real slow motion, like live, and that's how I like pictured it. But in your mind, like, you're going so hard, and yet your mind is though ready to go, like your body's ready to go. And it's an interesting experience, and being able to, I guess, in a way, how did you personally strengthen that mindset for that? And I know you mentioned, like, you've only wanted to be a SEAL. That was what you've been preparing for. But how did you prepare for that, the whole I'm ready to go type of thing,
There's only so much you can do, and it's really just physically, because it's impossible to really fathom the gravity of Hell Week. Hell Week, it is. When I went through, I'm not sure what it is now, but when I went through, Hell Week was the third week in training. And by the end of the second week, we're still waiting for the instructors to like tell us how to get through, like we're still waiting for the secret. And we're broken down. That's 2 weeks of buds of, carrying logs and running 30 miles a week just to chow, like, and back, not including commission runs. So like we're still waiting for the secret. There is no secret. There really is no secret. It's so simple, and people kind of hem and haw at it, but it's really as simple as don't quit. Just don't quit. That's really what it comes down to. To add on to that though, one instructor, he did give us a secret to making it through Hell Week. And so the Friday before, he was like, you guys want to know the secret to making it through? We're like, yeah. He's like, the secret to making it through is knowing you're going to make it through. And I was like, that's it. That's it. It's just belief in yourself. Self-belief.
Yeah. And that's it's a tough battle, that self-belief, when there is so much stacked against you in terms of and I'm just now jumping to civilian entrepreneur world of that I live in. It's you just, there's so many times where I just jump, I just execute, and I failed so many times, but you just keep going. But there are so many times where I'm just like, you doubt, you question that, and that's where that questioning of the belief, comes in. And I'm curious, like, within yourself, because another thing you mentioned that I thought was really interesting, segueing into you as a therapist, was you've become the therapist you wish you had.
Yeah.
And I really love that, because the reason why I ended up writing my children's book and becoming an author and now nonprofit founder is because I became the mentor that I wish I had.
Oh, cool.
To kids, and so it really resonated with me, because if I would have had somebody at 7 teach me that belonging and fitting in are opposites, not the same thing, it would have had a totally different relationship with myself growing up, right? And for yourself, like, what was the most surprising thing that you learned now on this side of the conversation as the therapist?
Just to be clear, I'm still in my master's program. I'm not technically licensed, so I'm still I'm a resident right now. The most surprising thing that I learned, I'd say the most surprising thing that I learned. So I work strictly with law enforcement and their spouses, and probably the biggest thing that I learned was that they don't all want to get after it like I would. They don't want to.
And can you explain how would you do it versus how they're doing it?
How
would you do it?
So depending on what we're talking, so let's just say, for example, I got a client who has a history of TBIs, of PTSD, a very unstable relationship with spouse, what I would do is I've been seeing this client for several months. I don't get the sense therapy is really going to take him to where he wants to go. And it's not just me. There are modalities out there that are the nuclear option, quite honestly, and therapy isn't it. I would take it to the next level and probably look at other options out there beyond therapy, such as psychedelic medicine. Therapy is very helpful for many people, but not for everybody. Some things you need to go the extra mile. That's what I would do, quite honestly.
It was funny. Fun fact. I was a life coach in my 20s. I find it so funny that people paid me to be their life coach when I barely had my own life together. I was 20, right? But I did. And it was like therapy. We did this, we did energy work. And then afterwards we would do a mini therapy session with each other. And I would always tell them, like, my goal is to get you to not come to me anymore. Like, to go to your own, and when we talked about earlier with Hell Week and before that, when we were talking about self-awareness and things like that, there was something that you did say that I loved, where, hold on, I have it written. A mind that watches itself transforms itself, right? And I mean, that's powerful right there. A mind that watches itself transforms itself. How can you, what do you have? I've noticed with a lot of people, from observing people, that they know when they're in it, like when they are getting angry, they know, like when there might be overreacting, they know, right? They can observe that part. They can't transform that, but they can't make the change to, it's just that habit. That's who they've been. It's a hard block to change. What do you have for those that can't get past that next part? And I guess maybe start with, if someone's listening, like, how do I even get to the first part of watching myself?
So it's a great question. There are several ways to get there. I hate to say there's never just one way to get there, right? Because everybody says one way is meditation, right? The more that you can sit there, and the more that you can, kind of just notice without judgment, without criticism, just non-judgmentally notice, the thoughts that do come into mind. That's one way to kind of develop that muscle. Because a lot of people think meditation is about, like, turning off your mind, and that doesn't happen until you're done, right? So
yeah, exactly.
It's not gonna happen. So it's all about changing your relationship with your thoughts. It's not resisting them. It's not fighting them. It's not trying to push them out. It's just acknowledging that they're there. The best way that I like to describe it is, if you're sitting on a highway and the cars are going by, you're watching the cars pass by. Those cars represent your thoughts, and I'm not trying to, like, zoom into the make, model, year, or driver, of the car. I'm not trying to get as much detail as I can about that car, that thought. I'm just noticing. I'm just saying, there's a red car, gray car, black car, right? And they come in and they go. And the same thing we do with our thoughts. Another way to do that, to build that skill, is through something called cognitive diffusion. And I'll give probably my favorite exercise to you right now for any listeners who want to practice this. There's a little more that goes into it. There's a little more backstory, but I'll save that. I'll just kind of share the exercise. But just know that for the listeners out there, this isn't something I'll just throw at somebody. There's a little build up to it. But the exercise is to identify a thought that often has you, kind of gets you hooked, right? Kind of gets you entangled with yourself. So, for example, one thought may be, I'm not good enough, or I don't belong here. Imposter syndrome, right? I can't do this. Whatever that thought is, and really, really let that thought get you hooked, get you worked up, and really try to get close to that thought. And so the first exercise I have them do is I have them write that down and then rate it. How hooked are you on a scale of 1 to 10? 1 being like unhooked, 10 being like completely unraveled in it. They'll write it down, and then after that, I'll have them write down the sentence. I'm having the thought that, and then whatever their first sentence was. Let's just say I'm not good enough. I ask them to notice what's different with that sentence. 99% of the time, like I said, there's always outliers, right? There's always rules or exceptions to every rule. 99% of the time, though, people notice that they get distance from their thought. It creates a little distance. And so that, they're asking them to rate, it comes down again. And then I ask them to write out a third sentence, which is, I notice I'm having the thought that I'm not good enough, or whatever it is that they wrote in the first sentence. And still their rating drops again. And that is a great tool to really learn how to sit on the side of the road and watch those thoughts drive by, right? To get distance. Because when those thoughts are really up close, then we're really enraptured in them, right? But as soon as I can get distance from them and just see, oh, that's a thought, but it's not me, then I can kind of get some more control over my behavior, right? Develop a little more agency with it.
Now, because you're doing an actionable takeaway, what I wanted to ask you later on in the show, but I'm going to ask it now because you're talking about actual takeaways. You built this framework around personal stability and psychological flexibility. Can you break those down into simple steps that we can apply today?
Yes, and no. So I say no because it's kind of a modular framework. It's not linear. It's because one thing doesn't work for everybody, and like some people may not need some cognitive diffusion, and some people are just more willing to accept. So it really just depends. I would say probably one of the most important things of that framework is understanding your values and using your values as a framework for your behavior. So, for example, I had another client, another officer who comes home and just kind of gets stressed. It's just stressed about going into the house with kids and wife, and there's a lot of difficulty among officers in turning it off for several reasons, which I won't get into, but you can imagine the stress from the job carries over into the house, right? And so getting distance from that is one, accepting the uncomfortable emotions is another. I'll just talk about the values part. What he ultimately learned was that the way that he was showing up as a father wasn't congruent with the person that he wanted to be as a father, as a husband. And so we did some values work. And so when those moments arise where he wants to yell at his kids or get angry at them just for being 5 or 6 or just for being young kids, he reconnects to those values and says, is this the person that I want to be? Is this in line with what's important to me? It's either yes or no, right? If no, then what is? And if yes, then okay.
Really, it's funny you say this because I run this nonprofit that is it's called Empower Lit. And what we do is we increase literacy while also building self-esteem, self-worth, and sense of belonging through author visits and literacy events. And one of the literacy events that I wanted to put is with older kids where they get to do the hard things physically, right? And then they do more classroom work on observing who they are, what they've learned about themselves through that physical activity or that teamwork activity, right? Maybe they learn that they don't listen to another person. Maybe they learn that they, and they get to also discover who they are, and then decide who they want to be. And in between that, they list their values to be able to get there. And I feel like a lot of us don't do that type of work. We don't do the introverted self, I guess, like internal, like self perspective of who we are and where we want to go. At what point did you start? Was this something that you've always done to observe yourself and know yourself or something like that? Or when did you start to do more of this?
I started doing more of it in recent years. I've kind of always been more introspective for sure, just my whole life. I read Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People when I was a sophomore in college, and I implemented all of it. I did my best to strive to do all that stuff. And even before that, I think I was reading books on ethics, and I was just always kind of been a nerd like that. More so in recent years for sure, because you realize as you get older that all those little things that made you upset or angry, in the past, nobody cares. They're just not important. They're just kind of silly, And so why get mixed up with that stuff, and why not instead, identify what really matters to you and focus on that? One of the other things that really compelled me to get into therapy and kind of pay it forward.
When did you decide? When you decided, hey, this is, because you said you medically retired. So I'm going to make the assumption, but you can correct me, that you didn't really plan for this retirement. It was, right? So how did your retirement, how was that transition for you And then, because some people are like, I know I'm going to retire. Here's what I'm going to do next. This is my plan, right? And that helps them with the transition because it's like they're giving themselves this new purpose, this new identity, and they're going in that direction. Whereas I've noticed on the show, more people that have medically retired, they have a harder time because there is no plan. They don't know. And then obviously going to this side of the world, it's night and day, right? It's not like a one civilian job to the next civilian job, switching careers, right? Which is challenging for people, but this is whole different level, right? So for yourself, what was that transition like? Because, you did hit that rock bottom.
So I was given the option. To medically retire or stay in, and I took the medical retirement because I was just done. There was nothing else I wanted to do. I did everything I wanted to. I was ready to move on. So I did know, that I was getting out. I knew what I wanted to do. I had a master's in organizational leadership, and so I really wanted to translate the lessons learned from a high level in the SEAL teams to corporate and to the private sector. I just didn't know how to do that because I didn't have any civilian experience right at the time. I transitioned and became a management consultant, and I worked there for a little over a year and a half before I really wanted to do something on my own, which was get into coaching, leadership coaching. And so I did that for 4 years before I fell to rock bottom. That transition itself, it wasn't hard at the time, but it caught up with me about 5 years later because, again, that ninja who can compartmentalize emotion, like I was a robot. I could completely disconnect any and all kinds of emotion and just focus on task. And I could do that ever since I was in high school. The military just kind of gave me a sharpening stone to get really, really good at it. That ultimately caught up with me. And so to answer your question, transition wasn't bad at all at the time, but I later realized just, the void of connection, of purpose, of, having something to really be proud of. I didn't have any of that, quite honestly. That was heavy. That was hard.
This podcast episode is brought to you by Thrivers Coffee. Podcast guest Nick McKinley's company, Deliver Fund, brings you guys Thrivers Coffee. It is ethically sourced, it's organic, and it supports traffic survivors. That is right. Thrivers Coffee is all about empowering us to making a difference in the fight to end human trafficking. That's why 100% of the proceeds go directly towards their goal of bringing freedom to victims of human trafficking. So if you guys love coffee that is organic, ethically sourced, and tastes absolutely delicious, and want to help to end the fight of human trafficking, check out Nick McKinley's company, Thrivers Coffee. Is it challenging for you being in the civilian world with the camaraderie that you had, the people that you were around? They're all hard chargers, it's a different, as opposed to here where like I send someone an email, it's taking them 5 days to get back to me. And I'm like, what is going on? Yeah. Right. Like, how is it like, and for myself, it's, I find my people outside of where I live, which is rough for me because I'd love to just like be able to like pop in and like meet somebody like physically that I can connect with on that. And this is the one thing I'm so appreciative for technology about, because the people that I've connected, like Kyle, that's how we got connected, and Kyle's been on the show. Like he's just one of those guys that like I love having in my corner because we could catch up and we're in that same mindset of, that like-mindedness, and for you feel more alone when you don't have that, and I want to talk to you more about finding that for yourself, because, when you get out and you're in this and you're not physically with those people, how did you do it? Or how do you do it?
I don't know. I'll let you know when I find it, quite honestly. I mean, that's a work in progress. I still have some close friends from the teams that I talk with. Those are probably my only friends, quite honestly, besides my wife. Those are my only friends. I don't really know anybody here. I don't talk with anybody around me. It's hard to meet people, and it's hard to really connect with people, both as an adult, but also coming from the teams. I mean, it's hard to relate. It's very hard to relate.
Yeah. Yeah. How is that on your? I guess like I don't know if mental health is the best word, but how is it on or maybe it is. I'm just trying to think of another word that might like, but do you understand what I'm saying though, in terms of like, uh, does it bother you? Does it matter to you? Does it affect you? Does it like, oh, I wish I had more of that connection or like anything like that?
No, it doesn't. I have the connection I need. I have my closest friends. I have
Mm-hmm.
my kids. I have my wife. I have my parents. I have my sister. Like that's all connection. I have everything that I need to be fulfilled in that area. Would it
Mm-hmm.
be cool to have like a close friend up here? Yeah, that'd be cool. But it's not like I'm keep myself up at night saying, "Damn, I don't have any friends."
Yeah.
So
What you mentioned actually, we talked a lot about emotions throughout this, and what I want to know in your as a therapist, like what emotion do you feel like we avoid the most? And yeah, what do you think?
I think all behavior can kind of be summed up by one of two motivating emotions, and that's love or fear. And so
Okay.
everything, any kind of sadness, anger, loneliness, grief, those are derivatives of fear. So I mean, to sum it up from that perspective, it would be fear. Like I said, there's derivatives of fear, and so a single emotion, I'd say just some sort of discontent. I don't
Mm-hmm.
say anger because guys tend to use anger because it's a very easy emotion to control, and it's a secondary emotion, meaning that anger is like the outside layer of the onion, and it's
Okay.
covering up the hidden emotions, the harder emotions, such as loneliness or abandonment or something like that. It's
It's
kind of fear.
interesting that you say fear because I was talking to somebody yesterday, Tuesday, yes, yesterday, and I was on a podcast and we were talking about fear and we were talking about COVID and how it was all fear based. And he mentioned, and we mentioned like, if there was another pandemic, would you say that people would blindly follow a second time after knowing everything that came out? And I said, yes. And he said, why? And I go, because they are in fear. And fear is probably the easiest way to control people. And how do you put up a shield of armor to prepare yourself for fear? Because it is everywhere. And sometimes you can't, like, you can't re- the other day I had to do a speaking event and my heart was like beating out of my chest, which is weird because I do these all the time, right? And I was doing something a little different. So that's probably why it was beating out of my chest. So it wasn't my normal thing. And I get over it and then, my body calms down. But the thing is, as I'm feeling it and I'm in it, like I am still doing my best to control my body, but my body does things that I just can't control. It's like we had Gavin Stone on the show, who's a body language expert, like ninth in the world. And he said, blink rate is one of the things you can't control your blink rate. And when you're lying, blink rate goes up, right? And what I want to know is what are some ways that we can put that shield of armor on to, for when that fear comes up to, so we can not, I guess, give in or not, be worried or allow anxiety to take over.
So this is a great question. If you think back to that time when you were doing your what was it called? Kind of like we called it mini buds,
The
but
prep
the,
program. Yeah. Team go on.
the
Yeah.
prep
Got it.
program. If you were to try to maintain that body armor, right, the whole week, would that have been feasible?
Probably
No.
not.
So we talked about letting go. At some point, you let go. At some point, you got to
Mm-hmm.
face that fear. Right? There's no. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know of any other way to get over a fear other than to face it, to walk right towards it. Same thing with anxiety. Same thing with depression. Same thing with grief. It's sitting with it and just the closer that you can hold it, and the more that you can accept it, the less you resist it. It's when we resist those emotions of fear or of anxiety or whatever it is, when we resist them, the fight becomes stronger, right? It becomes more intense. I mean, just think of rumination, right? People who ruminate all the time with anxiety, for example,
Mm-hmm.
you go down a rabbit hole and like it just keeps spinning and spinning and spinning and spinning, and you don't get anywhere, right? And it's all made up.
Right.
It's all imagination. So, but we do that. We ruminate to avoid the discomfort of the moment. Sitting with that discomfort, I swear, it is the key to facing anything. Let me back up. Facing any kind of fear, the key to that is really just is sitting with it, facing it, and going through it, whether it's fear or any kind of emotion.
Do you recommend writing things down as you're going through it and sitting with it? Or do you say just, you know, Or either or? Would you say like that's stronger, writing it down, or
People learn differently. I mean, not everybody is a learns that way through writing. So some people are more auditory. Whatever is most conducive to the learning style, do that. If it's a voice recorder or whatever.
I was going to say, you said auditory. Would you say sitting with the thoughts and then speaking it out loud on what you're feeling and what you're saying?
If that's the type of learning that really works for you, then yeah, whether it's writing or recording, whatever it is, any kind of capturing of reflective practice, that's absolutely going to be helpful, because you really can't improve anything that you can't learn, that you don't learn, right? That you can't manage. So I think that's very, very helpful.
So my final question on the show that I ask everybody is, what do you have for us listeners that we could do on a daily basis to help strengthen our mental fitness?
I would say sit in solitude. Sit in solitude for 10 minutes. No music, no guiding meditation, no nothing. Just sit there. Just notice what comes up. What thoughts come up?
Eyes closed, eyes open. What do we?
Whatever's more. Yeah. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Okay.
But just sit there and don't move. Okay. So a lot of times, when you sit and say meditation, for example, you want to like scratch your head or shift your butt, get a little more comfortable. That's all the unconscious way of avoiding the discomfort. So whenever those itches or that urge to move comes in, ignore it. Sit. Just push through it and sit with it. And notice that discomfort will go away.
Okay, that's interesting. Now, if we, I'm going to say we're all going to, if we get that itch and we move, is it like a restart for 10 minutes?
Depends how hardcore you want to be.
Yeah, I'm a little intense. Thanks so much. You were great. Really enjoyed having you on the show, and I appreciate you coming.
Thank you, Gina. Likewise. Great talking to you. Thanks for having me.
For everyone that's listening, please like, share, comment, subscribe, become a Substack member. You get all these extra goodies that only our Substack members get, and I will see you guys all next Wednesday. Thank you so much for listening.